This is the final straw. I shouted, slamming my fist on the kitchen counter as I stared out my window at the glossy white SUV blocking my driveway. Again. My coffee splashed over the rim of my mug, adding to my growing frustration. This was the 5th time this month that Karen Wilkinson's unnecessarily large vehicle had occupied my private property without permission, and I was officially done being polite about it. Before you watch the complete story full of twist and revenge, comment down from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Our neighborhood's HOA president, the same Karen who was currently treating my driveway like her personal parking space, had been making my life miserable since I moved in 6 months ago. First, it was complaints about my mailbox being an unapproved shade of black. Then came the warnings about my grass being a 1/4 inch too tall. Now she had escalated to straight-up property invasion, and I'd reached my breaking point. I grabbed my phone and dialed the towing company's number that I'd saved after the 3rd incident. Hello, Reliable Towing? Yes, I have an unauthorized vehicle in my driveway at 1842 Oakwood Lane. How soon can you get here? 20 minutes later, I watched from my kitchen window as the tow truck operator hooked up Karen's SUV. The satisfying sound of metal chains clinked as her car was lifted, and a smile crept across my face. I felt a twinge of guilt, but it vanished instantly when I remembered how she dismissed my previous polite requests with a condescending wave of her manicured hand and the words, "The street parking is so limited and you're hardly ever home anyway." I was pulling into my own driveway after work that evening when Hurricane Karen struck. She stormed across the street, designer sunglasses perched on her perfectly highlighted bob haircut, her face contorted with rage. "You," she shrieked, pointing a finger with a nail so sharp it could probably cut glass. "You had my car towed." I stepped out of my car calmly. "Yes, I did. After asking you 4 separate times not to park in my driveway." "Do you have any idea who I am?" she demanded, her voice rising to a pitch that probably had dogs howling 3 blocks away. "Karen Wilkinson, HOA president, and apparently someone who thinks rules apply to everyone except herself," I replied evenly. Her face flushed an impressive shade of crimson. "I had to pay $275 to get my car back. This is outrageous. You could have just called me." "I don't have your number, Karen. I've left notes on your windshield. I've spoken to you in person. I've emailed the address listed in the HOA directory. You've ignored everything." She took a step closer, invading my personal space. "Well, I hope you're happy. I'm going to make sure the HOA board hears about this. You've made a powerful enemy today." I shrugged, refusing to be intimidated. "I was just enforcing the same rules you're so fond of quoting to everyone else." Section 8, Paragraph 3 of the HOA bylaws clearly states that homeowners cannot use another resident's property without explicit permission. Her eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected me to know the bylaws that well. For a brief moment, I thought I saw uncertainty flicker across her face, but it quickly hardened back into determination. "This isn't over," she hissed before turning on her heel and marching back across the street. Little did I know she was right. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The next morning, I woke up to find a certified letter in my mailbox. As the official HOA letterhead came into focus, I felt my blood pressure rising. The letter cited me for 3 supposed violations: improper garbage can placement, unauthorized landscaping changes, and, the most ridiculous, creating a hostile neighborhood environment. I laughed out loud at the last one. Creating a hostile environment? That was rich coming from the neighborhood tyrant herself. The letter stated that I had 7 days to address these violations, or face fines starting at $50 per day. This was clearly Karen's retaliation, and 2 could play at this game. I spent my lunch break compiling a folder of documentation, photos of my properly placed garbage cans, the approved landscaping request form that Karen herself had signed 2 months ago, and, my personal favorite, a compilation of security camera footage showing Karen's car in my driveway on 5 separate occasions. Armed with my evidence, I emailed the entire HOA board, excluding Karen, requesting an emergency meeting to discuss ongoing harassment by the board president. I attached a few choice pieces of evidence and waited. The response was swift. 3 board members replied within hours, all expressing concern and agreeing to meet that Saturday. I could almost taste Karen's impending downfall. But Karen wasn't done. The next morning, I opened my front door to find her white SUV parked across my driveway once again, this time positioned at an angle that made it impossible for me to back out. She hadn't just parked in my driveway, she deliberately blocked me in. "Are you kidding me?" I muttered, pulling out my phone to take pictures from every angle. This was next-level pettiness even for her. I called my boss to explain I'd be late for work, then dialed the towing company again. Reliable Towing? Yes, it's me again. Same address, same vehicle. But this time she's completely blocking me in. The dispatcher chuckled. We'll send someone right away. Sounds like you've got yourself a problem neighbor. You have no idea, I replied. I waited on my porch, not wanting to miss Karen's reaction when she discovered her car being towed for the second time. I didn't have to wait long. About 20 minutes after the tow truck arrived, Karen emerged from her house in what appeared to be yoga attire, car keys jingling in her hand. She stopped abruptly when she saw the tow truck operator finishing up with her vehicle. What do you think you're doing? She screamed, running toward the truck with surprising speed for someone in designer yoga pants and pristine white sneakers. The operator, a burly man who looked like he'd seen it all, barely glanced at her. Ma'am, your vehicle was reported as unauthorized and blocking access. I'm removing it as requested by the property owner. Karen spun around to face me, finally noticing me sitting on my porch steps. If looks could kill, I'd have been 6 feet under. You, she sputtered, her face turning purple with rage. Again? Are you insane? I stood up calmly. No, just trying to get to work. Which I can't do when your car is deliberately blocking my driveway. I was only going to be a few minutes, she protested, though we both knew that was a lie. That's what you said last time, I replied. And the time before that. Maybe after paying towing fees twice, you'll finally understand that my driveway isn't public parking. The tow truck began pulling away with Karen's SUV, and she let out a shriek that probably shattered windows in the next county. This is harassment. I'm calling the police. Go ahead, I said with a shrug. I have security camera footage showing you deliberately blocking my vehicle. I'm sure they'd be very interested to see it. Karen pulled out her phone, fingers trembling with anger as she dialed. I decided to wait. This was getting interesting. The police arrived about 15 minutes later. Karen immediately launched into a dramatic retelling of events, portraying herself as the victim of a vengeful neighbor. When the officer turned to me, I simply pulled out my phone and showed him the security footage from that morning as well as the previous incidents. His expression shifted from professional neutrality to barely concealed amusement. Ma'am, he said, turning back to Karen, based on this evidence, your neighbor was within their rights to have your vehicle towed. It appears you've been repeatedly parking on their property without permission. But I'm the HOA president. Karen insisted, as if that granted her immunity from basic property laws. The officer remained unmoved. That doesn't give you the right to block someone's driveway. This is a civil matter, but if it continues, it could potentially be considered harassment on your part. Karen's jaw dropped. She'd clearly expected the authority figure to take her side automatically. When reality hit that she was in the wrong, she switched tactics. Fine, she snapped. But this neighborhood has strict rules about maintaining property values, and this person, she gestured dismissively toward me, has been violating multiple bylaws. The officer sighed, clearly recognizing he was dealing with a situation beyond the scope of law enforcement. Again, ma'am, HOA disputes are civil matters. I suggest you both address these issues through proper channels. After the police left, Karen stood in the middle of the street, glaring at me. The HOA meeting is tomorrow, she said, her voice eerily calm now. We'll see who comes out on top. I smiled. Looking forward to it. I arrived at the community center 15 minutes early for the HOA emergency meeting, clutching my folder of evidence and a thermos of coffee. I'd need the caffeine to deal with whatever Karen had planned. To my surprise, nearly every homeowner in the neighborhood had shown up. Word had clearly spread about the showdown between Karen and me. I spotted a few sympathetic smiles as I took a seat near the front. Karen arrived exactly on time, flanked by 2 board members who looked uncomfortable with the entire situation. She wore a cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment and carried a leather portfolio embossed with her initials. Classic Karen, always dressed for battle. Let's call this meeting to order, she announced, tapping a small gavel on the table with unnecessary force. We have several agenda items to discuss, but first. Actually, interrupted Martha Reynolds, the board treasurer and the oldest resident in our community, this emergency meeting was called to address specific concerns about your conduct, Karen. I think we should start there. Karen's smile froze. I don't think that's appropriate, Martha. As president. As treasurer and a founding member of this HOA, Martha continued firmly, I'm quite familiar with the bylaws. Section 2, paragraph 7 states that emergency meetings follow the agenda set by the requester, which in this case is not you. A murmur of approval rippled through the room. I was beginning to like Martha very much. Karen's nostrils flared, but she nodded stiffly. Fine. Let's hear these concerns. That was my cue. I stood up and addressed the room. For those who don't know me, I'm the newest homeowner on Oakwood Lane. Since moving in 6 months ago, I've tried to be a good neighbor and follow all HOA guidelines. However, I've experienced ongoing issues with Karen repeatedly parking in my driveway without permission, culminating in her deliberately blocking my car yesterday morning. I connected my phone to the projector and played the security footage. Gasps and whispers filled the room as they watched Karen's SUV backing into position across my driveway. Additionally, I continued, after I exercised my legal right to have an unauthorized vehicle removed from my property, I received this notice of violations. I held up Karen's letter. All of which are demonstrably false, as you can see from these documents. I passed around copies of my approved landscaping request and photos of my properly placed garbage cans. The whispers grew louder. Karen stood up, her face a mask of indignation. This is completely one-sided. Yes, I may have parked in his driveway occasionally, but only because he's rarely home and street parking is limited when I have guests. As for the violations, I was simply performing my duty as HOA president to maintain neighborhood standards. Martha cleared her throat. Karen dear, I believe we need to address the larger issue here. You've been using your position as president to pursue personal vendettas against homeowners who challenge you. This isn't the first complaint we've received. Karen looked genuinely shocked. What are you talking about? Another board member, David Chin, spoke up. We've had similar complaints from at least 3 other homeowners in the past year. The situations were different, but the pattern is the same. You cite violations after personal disagreements. Karen's face flushed. That's absurd. I'm just enforcing the rules. Selectively, added Martha. And that's not all. Let's discuss the landscaping company that services most of the homes in this neighborhood, the one owned by your brother-in-law. The room erupted in conversation. This was clearly news to many homeowners, including me. I sat back, watching Karen's perfect facade crumble in real time. That's completely irrelevant. Karen sputtered. Is it? Martha countered. Because according to our financial records, we're paying nearly double what comparable neighborhoods pay for the same services. For the next hour, the meeting spiraled further away from Karen's control as neighbors voiced grievances they'd apparently been holding back for years. From arbitrary rule enforcement to questionable financial decisions, Karen's reign of HOA terror was being dismantled piece by piece. Finally, Martha called for a vote of no confidence in Karen's leadership. The result was overwhelming. 28 in favor, 3 opposed, Karen and what I assumed were her only 2 friends in the neighborhood. Well, Martha said, adjusting her glasses, I believe that settles it. Karen, please turn in your HOA materials by the end of the week. We'll hold a proper election for a new president at next month's regular meeting. Karen sat motionless, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. Then, without a word, she gathered her things and walked out, her heels clicking aggressively on the tile floor. As the meeting adjourned, several neighbors approached to introduce themselves and share their own Karen stories. I felt a sense of community for the first time since moving in. Martha patted my arm as she passed. Thank you for being the catalyst, dear. We've needed this change for quite some time. 3 weeks later, life in our neighborhood had transformed. Martha was serving as interim HOA president. Rules were being enforced fairly and reasonably, and I hadn't seen Karen's SUV anywhere near my driveway. In fact, I hadn't seen Karen at all until one sunny Saturday as I was washing my car. A moving truck was parked in front of her house, and workers were carrying furniture out the front door. Karen emerged, supervising the movers with her usual micromanaging style. She spotted me watching and, after a moment's hesitation, walked across the street. I tensed, preparing for another confrontation, but her approach seemed different, less aggressive, almost hesitant. I'm moving, she announced unnecessarily. I can see that, I replied, turning off the hose. New neighborhood to terrorize? She flinched slightly at my words. I got a job offer in Phoenix. Better opportunity. We both knew it was face-saving fiction. After losing her position of power and having her questionable dealings exposed, staying in the neighborhood was probably unbearable for someone like Karen. Well, good luck with that, I said, genuinely meaning it. Everyone deserves a fresh start. She nodded, seeming to struggle with what to say next. I may have been overzealous in my approach to maintaining community standards. Coming from Karen, this was practically a tearful apology on bended knee. Water under the bridge, I replied. Though I'm keeping my security cameras just in case. A ghost of a smile flickered across her face. Fair enough. She turned to go, then paused. The new owners seem nice. Young couple with a baby on the way. They probably won't block your driveway. That's a low bar for neighborly behavior, but I'll take it. As she walked back to her house, I couldn't help but feel that our neighborhood had won a significant victory. The HOA still existed, but now it served the community rather than one person's power trip. That evening, several neighbors gathered in my driveway, now blissfully free of unauthorized vehicles, for an impromptu cookout. As we shared food, drinks, and stories, I realized that sometimes standing your ground against a bully doesn't just solve your own problem, it can free an entire community. The following month, I was surprised to find myself nominated for the HOA board. We need people who aren't afraid to challenge unreasonable authority, Martha explained. I accepted the position with one condition, that my driveway would never become community property. Everyone laughed, raising their glasses in a toast. To private driveways and reasonable neighbors, Martha proclaimed. And to tow trucks, I added with a grin. May we never need them again. As for Karen's famous white SUV, I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that it got towed one more time in Phoenix, just 3 weeks after she moved in. Some people never learn, but at least she wasn't my problem anymore. If you enjoy this story, please leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Towing the HOA Karen car was the best decision or not?